Hey guys, and welcome to season 3 of the Us People podcast. I'm your host, Savia Rocks, and in this season, I get to make my guests laugh, cry, and even make them think about life a little differently with the questions I fire over to them, which digs into their lives and professions a little differently. We even had a chance to change up the intro, giving you a fresh, new sound. I look forward to sharing season 3 of the Us People podcast with you. Let's go.
Hi, this is Kevin Kay with the Entertainment Sponsorship Group, and you're listening to Savia Rocks on the Us People podcast.
Made up my mind, now's my time to shine. Now's my time to shine. Time that you let go, time that you let go.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Us People podcast. I'm your host, Savia Rocks, and today I've got the lovely Kevin Kay here with me, who is the president of the Entertainment Sponsorship Group. Kevin, thank you so much for taking your time to come on the Us People podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Savia. I appreciate it.
No, I'm so happy that we're managing to do this now. It's been a long time coming, and I know everything that you do will have so much help to educate people in the world, especially with music. So, Kevin, my first question for you is, could you tell us a bit about yourself, where you grew up, but also how that influenced you to be the person who you are today?
I am, I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, and I come from a musical family, and actually quite the musical neighborhood. As I think back now, my dad was a musician, and he played with Bobby Vinton. He was an accordion player, played with a number of people throughout New York State. I played drums. I played piano first, and then I played drums. But growing up, Corey Wells, the lead singer of Three Dog Night, lived down the street from me. And Johnny Resnick from the Goo Goo Dolls lived a block and a half over. And then Rick James lived about 5 blocks away from me. So that was the neighborhood growing up. And so, music was always a big part of my life. Even though, sports was too. And I, went back and forth between playing football, American football, and, staying in music. The football thing didn't work out. I stayed with music as long as I felt I could through college. But at the time, I just got to a point where I just said, well, you know what, are we ever going to get signed? Probably not. And, back then it was either you got signed to a major label or you didn't, because there were no, DIYs, no independent labels, unless you were a blues band or, some of the jazz, which I wasn't. I was in a rock band. So was it going to happen? I just made the decision. No, it probably wasn't. And at the time I was getting my pre-law degree and thinking about law school. And just made the decision that I wanted to learn about the business part of it. So after I graduated, I went back to school and got my degree in music and entertainment management. And that's where my career started. I felt that being a musician, having my legal background, as well as now getting the business part of the music industry, I felt I, could be a very well-rounded executive, and started my career with Chrysalis Records as an assistant in Chrysalis, and then was hired by Polydor Records. I was at Chrysalis when I was in Atlanta, so I spent some time in Atlanta. Moved back to Buffalo after that was done for a brief period. Went back to being a paralegal and started with a booking agency in Buffalo, and was booking the Goo Goo Dolls in their early years. And then after about a year being back in Buffalo, I was hired by Polydor Records and moved to Houston, and I became the regional director of marketing and promotion for Polydor, covering the southeast part of the country, most of Texas, and then everything south of that through the south going east. And, we morphed in from Polydor Records. We became the PolyGram label group. And then at the time, PolyGram then bought Island Records and A&M Records, and then made those the two big divisions, um, along with Mercury Records. So you had the three big divisions under PolyGram. I was at Island, so I stayed at Island till 1997, and got a very interesting phone call to join V2 Records when Richard Branson was starting V2 Records after his non-compete was done after he sold Virgin Records. So I think I was the second or third person hired at V2, and had the opportunity to sit down with Richard actually when we were putting all this together to try to map out what this was going to look like. So, great experience getting to spend some time with him and learning from him. So we got V2 off the ground, but I got a call from PolyGram again. They wanted me back, and it was interesting. I liked my time at V2, but at the same time to get back to PolyGram, and Mercury called, so I went back to PolyGram, went with Mercury Records. I spent about a year there before they decided to sell. Of course, then that was the big merger when Universal Music bought PolyGram. And unfortunately, myself and hundreds of other people lost their jobs on that day. I was lucky because I got a phone call actually the day I was let go, I got a phone call, believe it or not, from DreamWorks Records. So I had the opportunity to join DreamWorks, which I did. Spent 3.5 years at DreamWorks Records, until they decided to sell. So once again, going through kind of a big merger. But at the time, this is when my whole thought process with partnering with brands came into be, because while I was at DreamWorks, even though we were an independent label, we acted like a major label, just given Mr. Spielberg and Mr. Katzenberg and Mr. Geffen owning DreamWorks. We had the financial resources probably as much as a major label, and maybe more. At the time, though, we were only signing brand new artists. We were not going to sign any name artists, even though Mo Austin and Lenny Waronker and Johnny Barbas were running DreamWorks. So many big artists wanted to come to DreamWorks, so they saw what we were doing. They knew we were going to be really artist driven, but they didn't want to sign any big name artist. Everything they wanted to start was from the ground up. So every artist we signed was brand new that nobody ever knew about. But we definitely gave them the right amount of time to develop. It was not uncommon for us to work a single at radio for over a year if it needed to be done that way. And so many of the artists that had number one hits with us, from Papa Roach to Nelly Furtado to Lifehouse, all had number one hits. All of those songs took us over a year to get there. But it didn't matter to DreamWorks or any of us, because we were really in the artist development business, and that's what we were trying to do. And I'm proud of my time there, because I can look at so many of the artists I work with who are still having great careers today. And I don't think they would be there today if they were maybe on another label and not given the amount of time. And, DreamWorks wasn't signing acts at the time that were very mainstream. We were signing things that were left of center, but we gave them the amount of time to develop and make them mainstream. So I did that, but I created a sponsorship division at DreamWorks. They allowed me to do that because I found the importance of partnering with brands, especially when we didn't have big name artists. We had nothing to leverage our younger artists with. I thought partnering with brands would give us that opportunity to not only generate another source of revenue for the label, but then to also tap in and integrate into the big marketing platforms of these brands. And after a number of conversations with Mo and Lenny and Johnny, they finally said, okay, go ahead and create this, which I did. And, besides working my job, I was, on the side developing this new division for them. And when it was finally time to implement it, they told me they're selling the label. And that's when I decided to start the entertainment sponsorship group, because I just believed in where this was going. I saw the future. I brought DreamWorks aboard as my first client to start the company, which was great. I got to work on a few little projects with some of our newer artists, even though it never really came to fruition, because once they sold DreamWorks to Universal, everything kind of got, packaged in. They took certain artists, went to Interscope, certain artists went to Geffen, and, they integrated. But it was fine. It helped me launch my career there, and, had that company going. And I've had the entertainment sponsorship group since 2002. And there have been times where it kind of sits on the sidelines a little bit. I got sucked back in to the music industry. After 3 years of doing the entertainment sponsorship group, Virgin Records called me and saw what I was doing and wanted to start to learn how to do brand partnerships, and thought, bringing me in, I'd be able to integrate that. So I became a hybrid marketing, promotion, brand sponsorship person. And so the sponsorship group kind of sat on the side a little bit, but that was fine. I did that at Virgin for 3 years before that big merger happened. And for the third time, I'm going through a big merger. And that's when they, merged with Capital. And I think that day myself and, I don't know, 300 people lost their jobs, which was fine. I just moved on and decided I'm going to go into the agency side for a while and give music a break, and went to Jack Morton Worldwide, one of the world's largest experiential marketing companies, and had the privilege of working on some huge music initiatives with General Motors and Clearwire Communications. So I did that, and then decided to move to Nashville. Going through, what happened with the auto industry here, and Jack Morton, the office here in Detroit had a lot of their business tied to the auto industry. When things fell apart, not only were people in the auto industry affected, but I think what a lot of people don't realize is that the number of marketing companies and ad agencies that are based here, so many people lost their jobs because so much of everyone's business here is tied to the auto industry. And so now you had huge amounts of people with a lot of experience all trying to fight for the same jobs that were, maybe out there. And I just said, you know what, maybe it's time to move. So, my family and I made the decision. I went down to Nashville, started looking for a job, and then got a job with Sony Music Nashville. And my family stayed here in Detroit. I lived down there. I would commute back and forth just because I was unsure where things were going to go. This was a new position that Sony Music Nashville created. I was the first person to hold that position, and it was National Director of Strategic Partnerships. And at the time, they really were kind of unsure where this was going. So because of that, and knowing the volatility of the music industry, and having gone through a couple big mergers and losing my job, I didn't want to move everybody down to Nashville and then have that go away. And I'm glad I stuck with my gut, because after a year, Sony went through their big merger. They cut 600 people that day when Doug Morris took over, 45 in Nashville, myself included in that. So I moved back to Detroit and worked for a couple different production companies here, handling their sponsorship needs. At the same time, I started getting into teaching. There was a new music college starting here in Detroit, and I was brought in to be the chair of the music business and entrepreneurship department, and also was an adjunct professor. So I got to teach at the college level and run the department, which was great. I really enjoyed it, and did that for like 3 years. And then, crazy as it is, at the same time, I still was working for the production company, so I had basically 2 full-time jobs going. Once I decided to stop teaching because my schedule just couldn't handle it anymore. And then I was at the production company, but I kind of wasn't happy. And I actually had a good friend of mine who I'd worked with when I was at Virgin Records, Tomo Milicevic, who was the guitar player for 30 Seconds to Mars. And Tomo and his wife, who are from Detroit, even though they were going back and forth between Los Angeles and here, they wanted to start some food businesses, because a lot of people don't know that Tomo was an actual chef. And his wife and him are very passionate about the food industry, and they wanted to create jobs and do something, for their hometown. So we reconnected and had a very long conversation, and they wanted me to run their businesses. And so I left the production company, went to, and now I'm going into a whole industry that I know nothing about. but learned and spent, and helped them, start their businesses. There were three of them. So we did that for 3 years. And then they decided that, well, we ran into some problems with the city of Detroit, and they pretty much screwed us. And they made the decision not to, move forward with the company. So, here I sat with, wanting to know what was I going to do. Um, and made a decision that maybe we should move to Phoenix and get out of the cold. And so I spent 3 months in Phoenix, looking for some work. But my wife and I made the decision it wasn't time, so I moved back here and then reignited the entertainment sponsorship group. And I've been doing that ever since. And it's been a challenge, of course, with COVID and things shutting down and pretty much the event industry, going away. So it's been trying to reinvent myself in many different ways. Um, but we're at a point now where things are really good. And so that's going. And then I think I told you before I started another company, and that happened last
Yeah.
year. And I started an artist management company, and I am now managing 3 bands out of Canada. So I'm back into the music space along with the entertainment sponsorship group.
That's amazing. What an amazing story. I don't know how you managed to keep up with all of that. Honestly. So you go from one to the other to the other. Did you ever feel, because from hearing your story, it seems like in your life you have taken an enormous amount of risks, especially being in and out of jobs, and but you've also been very lucky in the sense where you've got phone calls from people to say, come and work with me, we value you, come and work with us. But then obviously all the mergers happened, and then you kind of being redundant and moving on. What I would love to know is, what is a day like in your life now compared to back then? For example, what is a day like when you wake up in the morning to when you go to work for the entertainment sponsorship group? Throughout the day, what do you do? How do you do it? How do you interact with clients and people? Because I'd really love people to know exactly what you do.
It's and owning the company, gives me that, kind of flexibility, to pick and choose in regards. And I have to be careful. I can't take on every project because I want to make sure that I'm doing, quality work for people. Um, through my career, yeah, I've been through, a lot of big mergers, and I've lost my job, and it's traumatic. It really is. No matter where you are, either in this industry or any other industry, to lose your job, when you're doing a good job and it's no fault of your own, when you have a family to take care of, I mean, there's a lot of pressure, and it's scary. But I've always prided myself on making sure that I don't burn any bridges. I try to be you know I'm I've always approached the music industry differently. I've always approached it as a business, even back when I was first starting. And I think a lot of that had to do with maybe my legal background, just seeing things differently back then. It's funny because the very
Yeah.
first interview I ever had was with Atco Records. And I remember the senior vice president telling me after my interview that I was the best interview that he's had. But he wasn't going to hire me. And I asked him why.
Why not?
And he said, because you're too
Mm.
nice. You're too nice to go into this line of work. And I was a little shocked, disappointed, but I said to myself when I walked out of there, I was like, you know what? That's going to be my calling card. I don't need to be the shuck and jive, BS artist, that so many people in the music industry were at the time. I'm going to be the good guy, the business guy. I'll find my way, and that'll be my calling card. So I've always approached this as a business first, even though back then in the music industry it was about the music first, business second. I kind of saw it differently, so that's really the way I've gone about doing things. I think it's helped me throughout my career. Look, I'm constantly learning and educating myself. I never stop. I don't sit here and ever say I'm an expert in anything that I do. I mean, I had to teach myself about sponsorships and brand partnerships. I mean, today when you look at, the major labels that are left, all having brand partnership divisions within Warner Brothers, within Sony, within Universal, and taking advantage and really working that side of the marketing. And people thought I was crazy in 1999 to even talk about this, especially artists who, the old excuse, well, I'm not selling out statement that I got. And this was from our own
Yeah.
artists at DreamWorks. And my answer to them was, well, you signed a contract with a record label. You already sold out, I guess, if you want to look at it from that point. You already signed with a corporation. You signed with a booking agency. So this whole myth of I'm selling out if I work with a brand partner is, in my opinion, ridiculous. But so I look back and I see where things are today, and I see the importance and how important music is, in the brand world, in the corporate world. I'm happy that what I've been able to do and continue to do now, and the entertainment sponsorship group, I focus on consulting and coaching and teaching the industry how to do this. I think I truly believe now it's a skill set that the independent music community needs to learn. Festival owners, venue owners, managers, bands, artists. If you're going to do this on your own, brand partnerships are one of the 4 top revenue streams for an artist, and that's to go along with your live performance fee, your royalties and sync licensing fees, your merchandise, and brand partnerships. Those are the big 4. And if you're going to do this and run your businesses, you need this skill set. You need to learn how to do this. So that's what I do. I'm working to consult and teach people how to do this. I do, there are big projects that I take on. And when I do, I partner with my friend and his agency out of Cleveland. If we're taking on huge projects where they're looking for us to secure brands. So I do go down that road. We're specific as to who we work with because we can't take too many on, but I want to teach people how to do this. And, these last 2 weeks, I've made a decision that I am starting to put together my own online course that will be for sale to teach people how to do this. And that's to expand even past the music industry. It could be for, independent filmmakers, television, but also for youth sports organizations or podcasters, which I've been thinking about, and content creators that are doing things that have an opportunity to bring in brands as sponsors. This is a skill that needs to be taught. It could be at the high school level, high school sports programs. We all know how tight budgets are at schools, and
That's true.
everyone's trying to fundraise, but you're in competition with every other school, with with the families and the parents, everyone with their handouts saying, please donate here. Well, there's an opportunity to bring in businesses within your own community to partner with, but it's learning how to do that. So, I'm starting to create the course. Hopefully, I'm putting a deadline. Hopefully, in the next 60 days, it's done, and it'll be out there for people to learn that way as well.
You hear that, guys? If I was you, in 60 days, go on Kevin's website and check it out. I'll leave the link and everything in the description for you guys to see. I know lovely Kevin will definitely message me and let me know when it's all done. I think that's something really, really important for you guys to understand and definitely get into, especially if you're new to music, whether you've been in music for years, it doesn't matter. There is always something that you can learn. And I'm sure Kevin will agree with me when I say that you will never stop learning, especially in the music business. One thing I do want to ask you is about publishing. A lot of people are moving away from the record label and they're just concentrating on publishing, music publishing, because they see royalties obviously as the crown jewels. These, it's so important for everybody to have publishing. What are your views on record label, being signed to a record label these days compared to being signed to a publishing label?
Well, I mean, if you're a songwriter, you own all your copyrights, and depending on how big your catalog is, of course, and if a publishing company, is interested in bringing you aboard, you have to take a close look at it. Only because the amount of money that can be generated, if your songs are good and this publishing company is credible and they're going to work hard to get your songs placed, either in commercials, film, television, recorded by other artists, giving up that 50% is you need to do it unless if and I know a lot of independent artists will start their own publishing company, quote unquote, but the problem with that is unless you're tied in to all of the other 70 territories around the world and you have the software that's going
Yeah,
to track your music all around the world, that is a job, a full-time job in itself. And if you can't do that, and if you think that you've got a catalog that's going to be that can generate serious money, you should be looking at a publishing company to giving up that 50%. I know it sounds like a lot, but that 50% that you're going to get is probably going to be way more than 100, trying to keep
yeah,
100% of what you have and not get anything, because you might not be able to handle
that's true.
and be tied in and build the relationships and be part of all those other 70 territories around the country. We've looking, the bands I'm managing now, and this is one of the first conversations we had. They have their own publishing company, and they own the rights to all of their publishing. Um, Even though they just got back all the rights for the 7 albums that they did as Universal Honey from the label that they had, but and they've done a good job over the years. They've had over 50 of their songs placed in television and film, but at the same time, they had no idea what's going on around the world because they're not signed up with all the other 70 territories around the world. And that's the thing. I
It's
mean,
true.
and they don't have the software to be tracking. So for all we know, and in today's world, as soon as you put your music online, you're an international artist. There could be somebody in Australia taking your song and using it in a commercial, and you have no idea. No
Yeah,
idea. So it's really important to make sure that as an artist, and a songwriter, you got to make sure that you're protecting yourself as well as you possibly can. And there are different organizations out there that work with independent artists that you could sign up with to make sure that you're publishing, as an administrator, that they're handling that part of it and watching what's going on for you. Um, but if you want to do it all on your own, I'm telling you, you better learn about the publishing world because it's super complex. I mean, it's a world that I am continually learning about. I've never, I didn't work on the publishing side of the music industry. I was in marketing and promotion and brand partnerships. So publishing is its own animal. Even the people that do it for a living
yeah,
will tell you it's an animal, and it's constantly changing, and especially with the laws changing around the world. And that's the thing. Each country has different rules, different laws. So if you want to be your own publishing company, just keeping up on that is crazy.
that sounds totally mad. I have been in publishing for 4 years, and I totally loved it. It was one of the best jobs I've ever had, going into publishing and understanding what publishing is, how it works. But one of the things that a lot of artists spoke to me about was marketing, which is definitely your field, Kevin. How would you say to a new artist or even an artist that is semi established, what would you say to any artist who wants to learn about marketing? How would you coach them to learn more and understand more about the marketing side of being an artist, and again branding and so on and so forth? What would your advice be?
Well, I mean, in today's world, unlike when I was first getting into it, you didn't have the access of information that's out there. I mean,
That's
there
true.
is a lot of great information out there, but, I always suggest to people, find out in your city, is there a marketing organization that you can join? Find a mentor, start to reach out to people in the marketing space, at ad agencies, marketing companies. I mean, you and I first connected on LinkedIn. I'm a big believer in LinkedIn. I'm a
Yeah,
big believer in LinkedIn. I'm very aggressive on LinkedIn. I'm always on there. I can't tell you how many clients I've gotten through LinkedIn who've reached out to me. because of it. And it's a great tool. So, if you want, it's like going to school, right? So marketing is your class to learn about how you're going to learn about it, right? It's, and in the music space, and I used to tell this to my students, on the first day of class. In this industry, it's all about who you know. So building relationships in this industry is hugely important. But on the other end of it, what might be even more important is who knows you. So if you're not going to
That
you're
is
not going to
true.
put yourself out there and start to meet people and build relationships, especially with people who have experience in this industry, that's a huge part of it. Because even though the music industry today is online and digital and so much more bigger than it was when I started, it's still a community of people, and understanding and learning from these individuals, especially people who've been in the industry for a long time. The amount of experience that people have is immense. So building a relationship with those people, and you can do it online. You don't need to just do it face to face like I had to do it. It's so funny. I even tell
Yeah.
my, I even told my kids, and they're older now, but it's like when I met somebody in the music industry, when I was first trying to get in, you got their business card. You had to go home, either handwrite a letter or type a letter on a typewriter, and then mail it to them. And then, hopefully they got it 14 days later, and hopefully they remember you back then, right? So in today's world, it's
That's
today's world
true.
is so much more instantaneous, right? You can get on Twitter, you can get on Instagram, get on their socials, send them a message, send them a text, thank them right away. Back in the old days, you had to work. We had to work harder than anyone today. We did.
That is actually true. That is really, really true. I would love for people to know you a little bit deeper. So the question I'm going to ask you is, and we're coming slightly off topic, but I like that fact. Kevin, when you look in the mirror, what does your reflection say to you as a person? But on the flip side of that question, has there ever been a time in your life where you have looked in the mirror and not recognized the person staring back at you? How did you manage to come back and be the person who you are today?
Well, that's a loaded question, but a very true question. And I think so many
Mm,
people in this world, actually go through that. And, I have learned over these last few years how to be vulnerable. And, you said when you look in the mirror, and, there have been many times in my life I'd look in the mirror and not see anything, not see anyone. And, learning to be vulnerable, it's not easy. To admit, that, you have, to put your feelings out, right? And show that, you're human, but our society today, says that you can't cry, you can't show weakness. If you're vulnerable, that's weakness. And in business, it's, if you talk about feelings, you're not a real leader. Problem is, the real courage comes from somebody who can be empathetic, who can be compassionate, who's going to be emotional, who's going to be vulnerable. Those are the leaders who are strong. Those are the courageous leaders, not the ones who are going to scream and yell and try to, put up this armor that they're tough and you can't be weak, blah, blah, blah. That's what I've learned, and
I like
that's what
that.
I
That's really,
practice
really
now.
true. I love that. So I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot with my next question, which is, if you had 30 seconds to pitch your positivity to the world, to inspire someone to work with you, what would you say in that 30 seconds?
I think the first thing I would ask them is, what are their goals? And, based on hearing quickly what their goals might be, to look at my experience, does what I have done and the things that I can do, does that align with what you're trying to do? Because if it does, I'm here to tell you that I can bring that kind of, integration and synergy to your projects, help you learn, because that's what I'm about. I'm here to help. I can take all of my experience from the legal side, from the music industry side, from the agency side, from the entrepreneurship side. I cover a lot of bases. I'm not, and I'm all about honesty and transparency today. And I would tell them, I'm no expert in these
Yes.
worlds, but I will put my resume up against anyone's, and I'm going to be able to stand tall. And it's about really, working with somebody. You got to like the person first and foremost. It's no different than
That's true.
no different with sponsorships. I had this conversation today with Kevin Saunderson, by the way, who's the godfather of the techno world, and we were talking, specifically about brand partnerships and how important it is for that partnership to work. Both sides have got to be on the same page. And if it's not, bad things can happen. Just like what I'll tell a client, if it's not a right partnership, you got to be willing to walk away from the money, because if you don't and something goes wrong, that is going to end up costing you even more than what that deal would be. So it's about connecting the dots. It starts with people first. Okay, that, maybe let's back up. It starts with people first. And those two people, or a group of people, need to work together. There's got to be trust. There's got to be honesty. There's got to be transparency. You can't be afraid of advice. You can't be afraid of constructive criticism, and there can be no ego. But unfortunately, as we see in the business world today, and just even in life in general, egos are out of control. Park it at the door.
That's true.
If your goal is to achieve something, and if I can help you achieve that through what I do, then let's work together as a team to do this. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm above you, and you shouldn't sit there and say you're above me.
That's actually a really, really good thing to say to everyone, because it's either pride or ego that gets people in trouble. I totally agree with you. Which actually the next question connects to that in a way. If there was no judgment in the world, what would you do differently? The reason why I asked that question, Kevin, is because we are constantly getting judged in our lives for who we are, how we look, what we do. But if there was no judgment in the world, do you believe that you would do anything differently?
No, I mean, as a person, you look at your life, just life in general, your business part, who you are. You need to own your story. Right? And once you own your story, you get to write that ending. So what you do with that, that's how you proceed. And if no one's going to judge you, then you shouldn't be worried about, what people think, or what they're going to, that's and that's not easy in today's world, because there's so much pressure on people to look a certain way, do a certain thing. If you do this, and like it goes back to what I was talking about, being vulnerable. The most courageous and the best leaders are vulnerable. They're able. That's the real strength. Holding things back and showing that you're some tough guy or tough woman, no, that doesn't work. You don't need to scream at people. You don't need to yell at people. We're people first and foremost. And I think people forget that part. They forget that they're actually talking to another human
Yeah.
being. They think they might be talking to a dog, and you shouldn't even talk to a dog that way. But that's, I think, the most important
Yeah.
thing is, own your story. Not Don't be afraid of it. And and once you realize you own your story, you get to write the ending. Don't let somebody else write the ending for you.
I like how passionate you was just saying that. That's really good, because people do need to understand that. I think people lack confidence in themselves, and sometimes you can be manipulated by other people and their opinions. So I definitely agree with what you're saying. The next question I'd love to ask you is, could you tell me about a time where you overcame an obstacle, but because of the passion and the love of what you do, it helped you come out of it?
It really, when there is a challenge or an obstacle, um, I think you first and foremost put it in perspective, right? What is, what's really going to happen with this? And too many times I think in business we see, problems get blown out of proportion for the dumbest reasons. There's a deadline,
Yeah, that's
and
true.
is it really going to kill the world? Is it really going to, upset the whole apple cart? And I just think that, for too long, people are just, and I've been in, so many, I work for so many big companies and small companies. And, I've been, part of this where you're so worried about doing things to fill time and not working about the quality of it. And if there's a problem that arises,
True.
I always look, why did this, first and foremost, I look at it, why did this happen? Could there have been things that are done differently? Oh, it could have been done differently, but that team was too afraid to talk to their bosses about it. And not having that kind of trust and that kind of culture, which really should be defined by upper management. It should start at the top, and that should foster straight down that no one
Like that.
should ever be afraid to say anything, regardless of what position you're at, be it CEO, president, or just the person starting out. Even the interns, or the assistants should be given that opportunity and feel that they can say and try to help. And sure, maybe their suggestion might not be the right thing, but let them say it. Give them that opportunity. Thank them for saying it, because you never know what could happen. So that kind of trust, honesty, that's where it needs to happen.
True.
And too many problems that happen are in places because that's not allowed. You're not allowed to talk. You're just supposed to do, at the agency side, agencies are afraid to talk to the clients because they're afraid of losing the account, but yet the client yells at them, screams at them, stomps on them, and they just take it because, oh, we need the money. Oh, we need this. Well, you know what? The whole relationship is terrible. You're miserable. Your whole team's miserable, which means you're going to put miserable work out. Well,
Yeah.
why are you going through this exercise? Right? When I talk to a client, the first things I talk about
That's
are
so
being
true.
honest, transparent. We need to work together. And if that's not your world, then that's fine. Find another agency.
That's true. I like that. I like how honest you are. It's actually making me smile. You don't really get that a lot. You don't really get people who are straight out with it. And some people who are straight out with it can be rude, like you were saying before. People can be really, really rude towards you. But you have to understand, even if there's a million people out there and you don't connect with, and you can always put them back and get a million different ones. People need to learn that, and that's really cool. That's definitely. What are you most proud of, Kevin, that you stand for as a person?
Mm, I think just standing tall and using my voice to really work towards injustices that are in the world, being able to now feel confident enough in myself to find my voice and to be you hear me talk about being honest and transparent. I always wasn't like that. Really these last 3 years have given me a big shift, and I see things differently today than I did 3 years ago. And it's I that's really where I'm at. I look at things a lot differently. I've looked at myself and look at the things that I have done. And yeah, I mean, a lot of times I don't think about what I've done in the past, and I look at my history and I thought, wow, I have done some great things. And be happy for that. I think a lot of us need some self reflection to think about what we've done, because I mean, we get so caught up in the world, and things go so much every day. The world goes faster, and we go faster, and we forget, right? And we're trying to do so many things, and I have really learned to slow it down and think about things a lot differently. Even though people might be listening to me thinking, oh my god, this guy's going crazy, he's doing this and this and this. It sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but it's how you prioritize and make sure that the little goofy things
Yeah,
don't overtake your life, and don't spend too much time on them,
that's true.
right? And think about what you can talk about the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of what happens from the 20%. So if that 20% in your day, if you focus on that, you're going to get the 80% output. That other 80% of stuff is just stuff you shouldn't be doing in the first place, but it's being able to be conscious enough to understand what that is and weed it out.
Yes, I like that. I definitely like that. If there was one song that was the soundtrack of your life, what song would you choose? Oh, I got him thinking. And why would you choose that particular song?
Man, you're talking to somebody who's been in the music industry for 30 years and all the artists I've worked with and some music that I
Yeah,
like.
I know that's gonna be a hard one.
Somebody asked me the other day actually what my all-time favorite band was, and I always go back to this band because I think I have probably the fondest memories of when I would listen to their music, to the things that were happening in my life as a kid. And it's the Doobie Brothers of all bands, but that band,
Yeah.
and maybe it was listen to the music or taking it to the streets, one of those two. Just growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up in Buffalo, which was a tough neighborhood, and but my friends, we'd always listen to this music, we'd stay up late sitting outside talking, and I just have, thinking back on that, and always, we'd be playing the radio loud or playing that cassette tape, or actually back then we had 8 tracks too, so I'm showing my age.
Yeah.
But just listening to that, I think maybe that's what it is, the Doobie Brothers and taking it to the streets or listen to the music. I'm going to put it those two songs.
No, I like that. It definitely sounds cool to me. When was the last time you felt totally at peace with yourself?
Well, I meditate now, so every morning. Um, I've been doing it for about a year now. It's definitely helped me. And that's when I talked about slowing things down. I have learned through, that process to slow it down, slow my mind down. My mind is always going. And I needed to slow it down. I really did. And so, yeah, it's definitely helped me a lot. I think that I get up early in the morning. I'm up at 5:30, and I have my coffee, I do my meditation, and then I go to the gym and I work out, and that starts my
I
day.
like it.
And it's I think that I've always been a morning person, early riser like that. I used to have a morning paper route as a kid, so getting up at 4:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, was norm for me. So that's the time,
Yeah.
right? And I remember when I'd be out there, walking the streets at 4:30 in the morning. There's nobody out, zero, right? And you're the only person,
Yeah.
and it's quiet, like nothing's happening. And I
Peaceful.
think that I always enjoyed that time. It gave me that time to myself and be able to think and dream and at the time wonder what my life was going to be in 40 years. And so yeah, I think that's my time in the morning.
I like that. I only have two more for you, Kevin, and my second to last one is, what is the best advice you have ever received from someone?
Man, let's see. Um, man, uh, try to think. I've had the pleasure of working with so many people and knowing so many people through the years, and it'll come back. Usually it's always about just being yourself, right? And I think my parents, would always say that first. Be who you are, and try to just be a good person, right? And one of the things I live by now is I always ask myself, what is the right thing to do? And I
That's a good
don't
one.
think, you can look at the world today, and especially in the political realm, at least what's happening here in this country. Too many of these politicians are not doing the right thing. They're not looking at themselves in the mirror and asking what is the right thing to do. Because if they were to truly answer that honestly, instead of doing what they're doing, too many politicians are going to do it because it's what the party wants or it's this. Well, no, it affects people. You're a person. So what is the right thing to do? Ask yourself that question. Look yourself in the mirror. What is the right thing to do? And you'll find the answer if you answer it honestly.
Mhm. Even if it hurts you for
Yeah,
a little while.
yeah.
Trust me.
Just do the right
Even if it
thing. If
hurts you.
everyone was to do the right thing, we might not have problems in the
Hmm.
world.
That is true. That is definitely true. Kevin, I have one more for you. Before I say thank you to you for coming on the show, I would love for everybody to know where they can find you on all your social media platforms and anywhere else you feel that people can contact you on?
Sure. I mean, please. I mean, it's Kevin K. My Facebook page, my LinkedIn page is Kevin K. The entertainmentsponsorshipgroup.com is my website for that. My artist management company is K2 Artist Management. So it's K2artistmgmt.com. I do have a LinkedIn page for the Entertainment Sponsorship Group. I am in the process of creating one for K2 Artist Management. So those are the best places to find me. Please reach out. I mean, I love just starting the conversation with people. So if anyone's interested in learning more about brand partnerships or the music industry, it starts with the conversation. I talk with everyone, and I'm not like some agencies where like, oh, I'll talk to you for 10 minutes. If you want to talk longer, I'm going to charge you. No. I mean, I've talked to potential clients, sometimes for 2 hours, and they might not sign with me, but that's okay. And I know recently I did that about 2.5 years ago with somebody. They reached back out to me and they reminded me of our conversation because I forgot about it. And they were so thankful of the advice I gave them. And they weren't ready for their project at the time. And now we're in serious talks for this project, and it's huge. They told me we couldn't reveal it to you back then, but because you took 2 hours of your time and didn't ask for anything and just were honest and helpful, and you guided us, you gave us great advice. Now, because they got this big project finally in a place where it's almost ready to go, now they want us to do other brand partnerships for them. So, I actually, and so I laugh at him all the time. I even tell him, I'm like, Steve, I don't even remember the conversation. He goes, I know you probably don't. You talk to so many people, but I do. So I'm like, thank you for remembering me. And that happened through LinkedIn. All of that happened through LinkedIn. So it works.
See?
That platform,
and that's
if you want to learn about the business side and connect with people on the business side, I'm telling you, LinkedIn. I should be an affiliate marketer for LinkedIn. So
I think you should actually. You just marketed them in a huge way.
That's okay. It'll come back. Good things always come back to you, right?
Oh, of course it will.
Good things
It definitely will. That is true. I totally agree with you, Kevin. I want to thank you so much for taking your time to come on the Ask People podcast. And I'm so happy that we've done this interview because it's been a long time coming. So, Kevin, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This was fun.
Cool. And guys, thank you so much for listening to the Ask People podcast. And please remember, you can subscribe and leave us a review on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and any other platform that you prefer listening to. Please also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can also donate to the Ask People podcast by simply going to the Savvy Rocks website or just typing in paypal.me/Us People podcast. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Stay happy, stay positive, and as always, please continue to be kind to one another.
Time to let it go. Now's my time. Now's my time. Time to let it go. Now's my time. Now's my time. Time to let it go. Now is the time for me to focus. Stop all that playing hocus pocus. Stop doing it yourself. You need a little help. This time I want to see you shining.
I try to get people to think in different ways, and that's part of learning. And part of being able to share your experience when you can present something to somebody that they might not have thought about. And, my bands now, we talk about this all the time. I've gotten them to think, that, they're not just an artist or a band, they're a business, they're a brand. And there's ways that we need to start thinking.
Time that you let go, time that you let go. Now is my time to shine. Now is my time to shine. Now is my time to shine. Time that you let go, time that you let go. Now is my time to shine. Time to let it go. Now is my time. Now is my one day at a time. Just enjoy the ride. Open those eyes, see the light. Ignite that fire inside it. Let it breathe breath into life. Push all your fears to the side. Control your mind, it's all alright. Enjoy your life, the joy is mine. Commit to you, you got the tools. Everything you do, you make the rules. Sometimes you need